What's going on, guys? It's Leo's Nerd Talk here, and today we're going to be going over Ballerina from the world of John Wick. Hi, my name is Leo, and if you guys like talking about anything nerdy, TV show, video game related, or just anything nerdy, you have come to the right place. And like I said, today we are talking about Ballerina, so without further ado, let's get into the review. Now, Ballerina, of course, is a spin-off of the John Wick movie series where we have similar situation where they're taking young men and women, training them from a young age to become killer assassins, and we of course, are following the story of Eve, which is played by Ana de Armas, and her kind of journey and her tragedy of her life becoming into this assassin in this kind of underground world that we've gone so familiar with in the John Wick movie series. Now, with that being said, let's go ahead and get into my pros. And starting off my pros, I just absolutely love coming back into this world. We've obviously have gotten so much information and more lore about this underground world through the John Wick movies, and kind of going even a little bit more deeper within this one as well by learning new different sides of it. It's not all just under the high table. There's other cults and groups around the world that are kind of intermingled with each other. And we kind of see Ana de Armas' character with Eve kind of navigating through that because of her tragedy that happens in her life and her kind of story that's trajected her into this life of being an assassin, even though she was almost free with her dad. And then on top of that, just like being back in the world, the visuals are obviously amazing. You have a lot more of like that really high color pop like we get in like John Wick Chapter 3 and John Wick Chapter 4, where it's a lot more lively. There's a lot of more colors and the clubs and music and, more kind of bombastic and very theatrical when it comes to like the fighting, where it feels like a dance, not more so robust like we get in like John Wick 1 or 2. But I still enjoy that aspect of it because it makes all the fight sequences really fun and very unique. You have all these different kind of wow factors when it comes to certain sequences, like where we have one that's probably one of my favorites is where Eve is going to try to get some guns, and it ends up being a very similar scene like John Wick Chapter 2 when he's going to get a tasting for his weapons, but they end up getting ambushed and Eve has no weapons around her besides grenades, and you end up getting this really cool sequence where she's fighting through a horde of people trying to get to her just using grenades, and it ends up being a very fun, unique sequence where you're trying to see all these different creative ways she can kill all these bad guys with the grenades. And she's ends up being pretty skillful, and I like that at the beginning of the movie you see her struggle. She's not meant to be like the woman version of the Baba Yaga. She is definitely brand new into this kind of syndicate underworld. So you kind of see her progression throughout the movie, how she starts out being kind of rusty and she's not the greatest fighter and slowly starts to get better and better throughout the movie. Now, no means does she ever get as good as John Wick, but she can get up there. She can handle her own for sure. She ends up killing a bunch of different people throughout the entire movie, handling hordes and hordes of people, coming at her all at once. So she is definitely a skilled fighter, and you can definitely see if they do end up continuing this kind of Ballerina subplot or spin-offs, you can see how she might be able to get a lot better and end up being one of the more feared women within the syndicate as well. And then of course, I like that we got a bunch of returning characters. We have Winston, who of course is one of the managers of the Continental Hotel within the New York branch and stuff. And then we have a couple other returning characters. One, of course, the Baba Yaga himself, John Wick, which I really, really enjoyed the way they implemented into this movie. He doesn't necessarily feel like he's taking over the film, because when you first see him, it's a very small snippet. It's when Eve is still kind of in this whole sequence of her in her training before she ends up being like a full-on assassin. And this movie, for those you don't know, take place after or during and after Chapter 3, and of course before Chapter 4 of John Wick. So you see the moment where John Wick goes to kind of get help from the director of I forget the name of the syndicate, but where they do all the ballerina stuff. And Eve is there and kind of meets him for the first time and asks how she can get as good as him. And he kind of tells her, like, you still have a chance to leave this life. So do it while you still have a chance, and it's I think a very fun way to implement John Wick. Of course, we get a little bit more into it, which I'll talk about in a second. But I do like that we have recurring characters and they don't feel like they're overpowering Ana de Armas' character. She definitely is a standout and is definitely capable of being a standalone character within this John Wick universe. So I very much enjoyed that aspect of it as well. I think directing, shot choices, music, all that stuff was absolutely awesome and made the movie feel so epic. It felt pretty quick paced for the most part. And again, fight sequences were choreographed absolutely beautifully. Everything looked amazing. Such great visuals. Like I said, I've already talked about the whole grenade sequence. We also have like the flamethrower sequence in the movie that is absolutely awesome as well. And then, like how I mentioned a little bit earlier, where you have her that she's not as good as John Wick, of course. You finally get the sequence, which this is not a spoiler. We see it in the trailer. John Wick gets sent to kill Ana de Armas because she's kind of going against some of the orders that she was given. And I like that you get a fight sequence between them two. And because she's not there yet, because she only has maybe less than a year under her belt within the syndicate, she gets pretty much like pummeled by John Wick. He easily can defeat her, and he's kind of trying to tell her like, just leave before I kill you. I've already could have killed you multiple times and just leave. And I like that. I like that they didn't make her become like this god of a killer within the syndicate. You still see that she has more to learn, more to improve on. And again, even though John Wick was sent to go against her, I don't think he necessarily overpowered the movie, and I don't think he stole the spotlight off of Ana de Armas' character. And probably the big question everyone's going to ask is this even as good as any of the John Wick movies? And I think this absolutely aligns with all the John Wick movies for me. I think this is right up there in terms of, if I was to rank it, this could be above one of the John Wick chapters. I would have to kind of go back and rewatch all of them all over again, but I think this movie was honestly that fun. I enjoy the character of Eve. I enjoyed her journey for the most part, and I think it's a great character to follow. And the action, the set pieces, the designs, like everything, the weapon designs, all the side characters, I think has the level of what a John Wick movie would bring. And getting a little bit more deeper into this world, I absolutely loved. So overall, this was an amazing, amazing addition to the John Wick universe. But with that being said, let's go ahead and get into my cons. And I really only have about 2 cons, if I remember correctly. But for me, the biggest con is I didn't feel the full emotion or revenge plot aspect of it to be that compelling. Now, it's a pretty big deal. I don't want to spoil what necessarily happens, but it's you could argue that it's a worse thing than what happened to John Wick and why he went on a full revenge plot or full revenge plan or whatever's. But it just didn't feel as emotional. And I think that comes with how stylized these newer John Wick movies are, where in chapter 1, it felt a lot more gritty and dark. After chapter 2, you definitely feel like they're a lot more stylized, they're a lot more colorful, they're more poppy, the music, the light, the coloring. And I think because of that aspect of it, it doesn't feel as gritty or dark or emotional when it comes to why one of these characters are on their revenge plot. And then I think on top of that, I don't think they sold the emotion of what happened that much either. It felt like it was kind of like just a one plot point of her long journey. It didn't feel like the reason why she's on the journey, even though it technically is. And I don't think that has anything to do with Ana de Armas' acting or anything like that. I think she actually did a very amazing job when it came to her acting abilities in this movie. I think it's just the way the movie was paced, the way they introduced you to certain characters, and it didn't feel like it was this tragedy happened and she was right into revenge mode. There was years in between, so it felt a little less urgent like it did in chapter 1 of John Wick. And I think that might be it. I think that might be my only gripe, because everything else I thoroughly enjoyed. It's just the emotion wasn't really there. I didn't fully buy into the revenge plot. But that's going to be it for this one, guys. Let me know what you guys thought about Ballerina. Have you guys seen it already? I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think it's a fantastic addition to the John Wick universe. So, with that being said, if you guys like talking anything movie, TV show, video game related, or just anything nerdy, you are in the right place. Make sure to like and subscribe. And remember, stay nerdy, my friends.